Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Today's topic, I feel like it's a good one. Normally I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited for it, but this one might be a little bit heavier just because of the general topic that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it might be a lot heavier. I'll also say, today, and I will tell you why today, but if you're watching this, you can see my background's a little bit different than normal. It should be fine, and I apologize in advance if there is a little bit of background noise that happens to happen, but this is where we're at today. We are making it work. And today we're talking about, caregivers and caring for the caregiver and how do you care for yourself, but most importantly, as a caregiver. And, there's a lot of different types of caregiving, like parents. Obviously, parents are a massive caregiver. We think about if you have sick parents, like having to care for a sick parent, if you have a sick child, a child with special needs like that bumps you up probably a little bit more in the caretaking field. If you have a partner who is sick, who maybe is not sick and you're still taking care of them, like that, there's so many different types of caregivers here. And, I've mentioned on many occasions at this point, on the podcast and on social media of like, it's a very stressful time for me right now. And we decided on this episode, I feel ready to share a little bit. Tears might come because this is still pretty fresh. But to share a little bit more about what I'm going through, and I'm in this caregiver position in a very new and different way than I've ever been right now. And so we felt like this topic was very relevant based on my situation and also the fact that we work with so many people who are caregivers, and it can be a real struggle. And for me right now, my partner started having some like weird health stuff going on like end of February, beginning of March, and then it like almost overnight got like significantly worse. And we spent some time bouncing around urgent cares, ERs. Obviously I look and read and interpret blood work, and there were some things that stuck out to me that continue to not be addressed, which is frustrating and infuriating to me. And we were able to get a diagnosis, and my partner, we were able to get diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. My partner was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is cancer. And so it's been a lot. One, trying to get the diagnosis. Two, if you've ever been with anyone or know anyone who has cancer, the amount of testing that has to be done before treatment starts and to get the diagnosis. And, for him, and I know this is the case with many cancer patients, he had to get a port in, which is a more intensive surgical procedure than they really let on, but just by the way. And he started chemo this week. So it's been a lot, obviously physically, mentally, emotionally. We are staying here in Arizona. We're about an hour and a half from the Mayo Clinic, which, by the way, if you are going to have to go through like some pretty serious stuff, like the Mayo Clinic is top notch. Just the care team, like the care that we've received there so far is just like, I've really been blown away outside of one little aspect, which I can get over. And, it's just a difference of Western medicine versus functional medicine, with an iron situation. That's kind of where I am. So I am like knee deep in the caregiver role, and he felt quite awful the last month, and so trying to care for that, and then his reaction thus far to chemo has been rough to say the least. And so this week has obviously been a lot, and he's still, we're on day 5 now at this point of, post chemo, his first round of chemo, and we're still going through it. We're learning a lot, and I hope this will get easier. I do have faith we will be a little bit more prepared going into the next round. Um, but yeah, we did decide to, he decided he wanted to do chemo, and we're also doing a wide variety of holistic remedies as well. And, obviously running them by, our team at Mayo. We have quite the team of doctors and nurses and integrative specialists and all these kind of people, like fertility specialists, because that's a whole thing too. And yeah, it's just a lot. So, we're very fortunate that we have that, and it's still a lot. So I feel for you. I understand, and I'm going to share, no, I am not perfect either in the caregiver role. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'll share throughout this episode too, like some things that I'm doing, and also some things that I have just kind of let go for right now.
So, yeah, this is a really good time for us to have this episode and talk about everything just because, Megan is in the middle of it right now. And we've certainly, like, we've had different caretaking experiences, both of us throughout our lives, but this is like one that is at the forefront right now. So, Megan is going to be able to share some very helpful tips about what she's doing to help take care of herself and, the caretaking aspect with her partner as well. So I think there's going to be just a lot of good information in this episode.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm super excited to be able to share a lot of this and what I'm doing, what my partner and I are both doing together, separately. And, I one of the, reaching out to other people has been a big thing. And I was talking to, a woman I've worked with for many, many years at this point, for a lot of my trauma work. She's seen me through, a lot of my trauma work over the last handful of years at this point. And we were having a conversation last week, and she brought up this question. And, I think if you are going through more of a temporary situation, like for us, we do have a time limit. This isn't going to be a forever thing. This is, 4 to 6 months of chemo is kind of what we're looking at, assuming all goes really well, which is really the goal here. And, she brought up the question of, how do you want to end this? Where do you want to be individually and as a couple at the end of this? Do you want to be burnt out, resentful, angry, or do you want to be, in a decent spot with, having a deeper connection, even closer than ever? Do you want to be in a full-blown autoimmune flare again? And really thinking about that. And this is something that my partner and I have talked a lot about. And is also on the forefront of his mind of making sure that yes, he absolutely needs a lot of extra care at this point. There's a lot of things he is just not capable of doing right now. And at the same time, he doesn't want me to be burnt out either. And I can see it on his face. I can see the concern from him of making sure that I'm taken care of, and also knowing, the situation I came out of and in my year last year and all the stress of that. And so, I think that's a really important question. And especially if there's a time limit, and also, thinking about, I've thought a lot about, talking about this episode and what we're going to talk about. But even if you are, like a caretaker for your children, how do you want your kids to come out of this? What do you want? What kind of example do you want to show for your children? How do you want to be able to show up for your children, for these people in your lives? And do you want to end up angry, resentful, burnt out, in a pretty rough spot? Or can you do some things? And yes, you can. And I'm doing those. And we're going to get into this here in just a second, you know, that are really going to give the example of you need to take care of yourself, and you cannot continuously pour from an empty cup. And if you do, you are not showing up as your best self and leading by example in whatever kind of situation that you're in. So I think that's something that's really valuable and really important to think about first and foremost.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's honestly, if there's like a highlight of today's episode or the biggest theme, that's going to be it, is kind of this like self-abandonment, how easy it is to do that when you are caretaking for another person in either of these situations. Like even as a parent, if you're not taking care of yourself and doing whatever you need to do to feel balanced and regulated and feel like joy and comfort and all of these things, that is going to reflect on the person that you're caretaking for. And that right there can create like issues within a relationship, whether that's like with a partner, a child, like whatever it may be. The not participating in abandoning yourself is such a huge piece here. And easier said than done. I get that sometimes when we have a lot going on. But then there's this other aspect that comes into play where maybe we need to ask for more help. Maybe we need to have a better support or community that we're able to just be a part of so we can start to feel some of these things.
Yeah, and if you're not comfortable asking for help, or that's like a new thing for you, or you're used to being, superwoman, or, this person who does it all by yourself, look, it doesn't work. I have been that person. I've tried to do all the things by myself, and it led me to burn out more times than I can count. That's how I ended up with chronic illness issues, chronic pain issues. And so, you have to ask for help, and you have to find some resources. And this, looks different. For me right now, kind of the big areas that I'm thinking about, okay, how can I support myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically? And really thinking about those four areas and doing what I can within those from a rest standpoint and also from a support standpoint. Those are really, really, really valuable. And there's a lot of ways we can do this within kind of each category. And obviously it's going to depend on the person and what supports them within those areas. So maybe we can start kind of there of like, physically speaking, like how can you support your physical body, as a caretaker?
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorites too, just like in general. But, if you are going through something like this, something, some type of physical body support, like a massage, acupuncture, maybe that's chiropractic care for you, maybe that's energy healing. Like there's so many different things that we can do, craniosacral therapy, just like something to help support your physical body. And then I would even throw movement in there as well, just because that is kind of the same thing when we're talking about supporting our physical body, but just making sure you're getting something in to help keep your own like mind and energy balanced is, I mean, it's going to be a game changer because we get so burnt out like mentally and physically from doing caretaking. So yeah, this is a huge part of this.
Yeah, and so, some things that I'm doing, I was very used to doing body work very regularly, and I haven't had any body work done. It's early April right now as of the recording here. I haven't had any body work done since early November. And I know, which is
I am shocked that you're saying that. What?
yeah, and here's the thing, I haven't felt like I really needed it. My partner, will give me foot massages and do some cupping and different things like that. But I haven't had a massage or a chiropractic adjustment or anything like that since early November, since I was back in Richmond. And, after we record this episode, I'm actually getting a massage. So that, that's a big thing for me. Food is a really big one. And food is not perfect by any means. My partner and I are used to eating similar things and we eat pretty clean. And I'm also used to him helping out a lot in the kitchen. So this is something that, we're still really figuring out of me taking over the cooking again while also caring for him and, the appointments and working and all that kind of stuff. And so, for me, a lot of the things we talked about in the like meal planning, meal prepping episode are really coming back in of what are some of the most basic things I can do to support my body nutritionally? Putting stuff in the crock pot, making large one pot meals, getting a rotisserie chicken and having frozen vegetables, and I am eating out more than I'm used to, more than I would like. And I'm also not beating myself up for that either, of doing what I can to prep when I can. And, if I need to go to like Chipotle or a Cava or, some of these easier things for me, it's okay. Like I'm not beating myself up. I'm still remaining, gluten-free is like the most important thing for me. The protein is a huge thing for me. My breakfasts have largely looked like, just some like loaded up yogurt with lots of protein and fats and some good fiber, or just some chicken sausage and a piece of toast with some preserves. So, and like that is okay right now, especially, the other piece of this too is with nutrition, some people usually go one of two ways when stress increases. Either their appetite decreases and they stop eating, which is typically where I land, especially since healing a lot of my emotional and trauma connections with food. My appetite drops pretty significantly and I'm not super hungry. And I also know that I need to feed and fuel my body with food. So making sure I am eating on a regular basis, doing what I can with the protein and the fiber and things like that, and not totally trashing my body from a nutrition perspective and also making some compromises here too.
Yeah, it's I just want to say sorry if anyone can hear my dog snoring. I can't stop him. He's behind me and it's happening. So sorry if you can hear that. But yeah, the nutrition piece is really big because, like you said, we either go one way or the other. And realistically, the most important thing is to make sure that we continue eating. Like, yes, when we're under this kind of stress, of course it's going to change. Like you're going to naturally go out to eat more because you need to do something to take less of the stress off of yourself. So the more you beat yourself up about it, it really is just unnecessary at that point because the most important thing is making sure that you are fueling your body enough to actually continue to care for yourself and do the caretaking that you're doing. The episode that we had just previously recorded about like meal prepping, that might be a nice one to pair with this for anyone who's listening, just about the food stuff. We really hit on some of these easier things to do as far as making sure we can get like semi-healthy meals in. But yeah, it's also nice that nowadays there are better options like, like Kava, like you mentioned. I know there's one, I think it's called the Original Chop Shop. I think that's in Arizona, but there's plenty of places that offer more decent takeout food compared to like a fast food place. And again, just making sure we're actually feeding ourselves instead of not eating at all, because that's when things can really start to go downhill when we talk about like some of this burnout. And then same thing with if we're only gravitating towards like carbs and sweets because they spike our blood sugar and that keeps us awake and gives us like the short bursts of energy. Same thing with coffee. Like either of those things can end pretty badly if we consistently do that for a long period of time.
Yeah, for sure. And if food is of comfort for you, that is also a signal that, hey, we have some work to do on the mental, emotional, energetic side of things too, to work on that relationship and find comfort and soothing in some other areas, not just through food. And at the same time, not shaming if that does happen. If you have a cookie or some ice cream or, chips or whatever it is, like as long as that's not all you're eating, also not beating yourself up for that either and finding this balance. Water is another really big and basic thing. I'm really trying to not overdo it on the caffeine and I am really tired and the caffeine is for me a comfort thing. It's also I love the taste of coffee and it does help and making sure that I'm not overdoing it on the caffeine so much so that it interrupts my sleep. And also making sure I am still getting plenty of water, I'm doing extra electrolytes right now just because I know that with the higher stress, a lot of the electrolytes and other nutrients are going to be depleted. And so making sure I'm keeping up with that. I'm also like very consistent with my Shilajit gummies, which
Yeah.
have all kinds of trace minerals to make sure that I am getting those as well. And it also does help with the energy side of things too.
Yeah, and there's just because I know like for some people I'm the same way. Like I don't love coffee because of the energy factor. I'm the same. Like I love the taste of it. And for some people who are maybe over relying on it, there are other options. Like there's herbal teas. If we're just looking for the comfort of like having something warm, herbal teas is good. You know, matcha is still technically a caffeine, but there's a little bit more benefits for the body with that. And there's different things you can play with too. Like I know we've talked about lion's mane on a handful of different episodes. Like that's a more natural source of energy stimulation in the body. So there are absolutely other options that we can consider when we're trying to increase our energy. But a big part of that is going to be if you are able to eat regularly, certainly get like a good amount of protein in, that right there is going to help with the energy piece as well.
Yeah, for sure. And the functional mushrooms, I am taking lion's mane and cordyceps and reishi very consistently right now. The cordyceps definitely help with the energy. You know, obviously there's a lot going on in my brain, especially trying to make sure that I'm keeping up with all of his appointments and calls and medications. And obviously he's doing some of this too. And I'm just kind of a backup here, just to make sure we don't miss anything. And also, with the business, I shared pretty early on what was going on with the team because I needed the extra support and helping, having Shannon and Brendan and our VA and she does basically all the back end stuff, having her help with so many different things and asking for that help. And I also recognize I'm very fortunate that one, I have an amazing team that I can rely on for some extra support. And two, that I do have a lot of flexibility within my schedule that, largely I take calls only Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, which leaves Monday, Fridays open for extra appointments, whether that's for him, for myself, for both. And also if I need to move things around, I can. And I know that is a bit of a luxury that not everyone has. And if you do ask for it, utilize it as much as you can.
Yeah, especially if you are someone who like has people around you too. And, we're both kind of in a situation right now where we just don't have like, physical people around us besides like calling someone on the phone. So if you are someone who has like, actual family or friends around you that can help, that also makes a huge difference. And yes, like it can definitely be hard to ask for help sometimes, but ultimately going back to that original question, like how do you want to feel at the end of this? If there is an end to it, how do you want to feel? And it's so important to just ask for help wherever you can to take some of the pressure off yourself and just do some of these little things that we're talking about. Like maybe you book a massage for yourself or you do an energy healing session. Anything that's going to help your body regulate a little bit better. I know it might sound like even for people, because I used to be like this and this is coming up right now. I'm like, oh, I don't have the money to do that. I don't have the time to do that. Well, guess what? If I didn't do that, I was just digging myself into a deeper hole. So like at some point, if you are feeling burdened and stressed, like you have to sit down and have a conversation with yourself and just say like, hey, how do I want to feel and what do I have control over changing? Because something may need to change.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like reaching out, I have amazing friends and obviously an amazing team, which has been super helpful. My partner's parents came down last week and helped with a lot of the cooking and driving to certain appointments, which was super, super helpful and temporary. It was still very, very helpful and very supportive. And so having all of that. And, the other thing too is what I know it's easy. And once again, like I'm going through this, so like I really know how hard this is, but taking a few moments to yourself whenever you can, in the mornings before, and usually I would do this like pretty early in my day. And right now that's not happening like right at the beginning, but before I left to come record this podcast, I took like 7 minutes to just like sit, I like put on some binaural beats and just like did some deep breathing, put my hands over my heart, connect to my body. And I've been doing that largely at the end of the day as well. And just whenever I have a few minutes, like honestly, like even if it's in the bathroom of like sitting, going to the bathroom and then just like taking an extra minute of just like breathing, closing my eyes, like things like that, that goes a really long way of helping you be in your energy, connect with yourself, connect with your body, connect with emotions that are coming up. Because I do, once again, like, it's easy to just like shove them all down and just like, just go, 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 just shove them down. And that is my default nature still. And I know once again, like that is only going to hurt me and make me sicker long term. And so it's like, how can you add in these moments? How can you add in these little things? And yeah, like having someone else care and support for you, huge. And you also, if that is not an option, how can you just spend a few minutes with yourself and caring for yourself, connecting with your body, connecting with your energy and your emotions? Because it's stressful and it's a lot, and there's a, waves of emotions that you can absolutely experience, and they will make you sick if you are not careful and allowing and giving yourself some time and space to feel into them and to be with those.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about like pretty, I guess I'll say like pretty holistic things when we talk about like energy work and all of this stuff, but for some people too, just to make the connection, this can look like maybe going to get your hair done at the hair salon or like getting a blowout, getting your nails done. It doesn't have to look like everything that we're saying. It can really look different for everyone. But if we just have that little bit of space to just like focus on ourselves, and I will say like the appearance piece, like the feeling that comes with it. If you're someone who's feeling super run down and like maybe you haven't taken a shower in like 8 days, even taking a shower, getting in like a 5 minute shower and putting on like some of these binaural beats, you're just like taking a second. Sometimes when I'm really overwhelmed, I don't have a lot of time, I will sit on the floor in the shower for just like 5 minutes and just like breathe and just like feel the water running over me, kind of like a cleansing aspect. Like we got to do what we can do when we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like where can you fit it in? And for me, I know like especially with my history of gut issues, obviously gut health remains a big thing. So, taking a few minutes before I eat is a really big thing. A lot of times like my second time of the day where I'm t taking a few minutes to myself is before dinner. And eating meals together is a big thing for my partner and I. We love like being able to have meals together, and it's just we're not quite on the same schedule right now, and which is okay. And needing that time to myself of like, hey, I need a few minutes before I come and sit down and eat dinner with you, because I need to make sure that I'm in a little bit more of a parasympathetic state, because I know that's going to impact, my stomach acid levels, bloating, food reactions, short and long term. So making sure I'm doing that. I'm also like very consistent with HCL support right now to make sure that my stomach acid levels remain okay, just knowing that stress is really high and that's naturally going to bring down those stomach acid levels, and making sure that, that's a little thing that I can do that's very, very supportive. And I know the benefits of that on multiple fronts.
Yeah, and the communication piece that came up for me while you were saying this is we have to let people know that we need that extra space for ourselves, and that can feel difficult sometimes as well, just because, there's guilt and there's shame that comes with stepping away and giving yourself a moment. But if we're not communicating it, that is when some of that like anger and resentment can start to build. So in right off the bat, like working on that piece could be a huge thing for you, just because it can easily resolve like a lot of conflict that comes with holding our feelings in. So yeah, that I'm glad you brought that up. Just like saying like, hey, I need a moment for myself. Like I'll meet you over here in a second. That is huge.
And even, and once again, like I'm very fortunate to be in the relationship that I'm in, and we're both so focused on healing within ourselves and together that it is easier for me at this point to have some of these conversations and to, schedule a massage and be like, hey, what is the going to be the best day for you where I can step away for a couple hours and, spend that time and not have to, you know, uh, have my phone next to me during the massage and have it on and just be aware. And we kind of planned this out that we knew by today he'd probably be in a good enough spot that I can make sure he was taken care of in the morning and had everything he needed before I left. And I could have a few hours to myself to, be able to come and record this podcast. And I'm recording this not in our RV for a reason, so that he has some extra space and quiet. And darkness for him is a big thing with the head injuries. So he has that space, but I could come do this and then I can go out and just like decompress and really focus on myself for a solid 90-minute massage. So, and that communication piece is really hard. And, so one of the things that came up for me early on was I have to be strong for him. And we had a conversation when we were coming back from chemo this week that was kind of prompted by my session with this woman who I've worked with for many years at this point. And I know how to be strong. I know how to push through. I know how to be strong. I can get through anything. And how do I bring softness and some of this femininity that I've been working so hard to embody? How can I bring that in? And how can I embody more of that through this process? Because I already know how to be strong from a hyper masculine state. And how do I bring a different kind of strength and softness that is supportive for him, for me, for both of us into this time? And I don't have a great answer for you right now because I'm still working on it, but it's something that I've really actively am thinking about. And, a lot of my intention setting around, my meditations and even breath work right now is how can I be a little softer? How can I bring some extra softness into the situation where I can allow the emotions to come up? And, one of the things that she said to me is, you're not very good at falling apart in front of people. And yes, 100% I'm not good at that. Even around, my friends who I do all of this like deeper connection work, it's hard for me to cry in front of groups. And it's hard for me to allow myself that. And I feel that kind of same way, even in front of my partner, who it's okay. And we've had a lot of conversations about this and he's done a good job in being like, let me hold you, let me hold your hand, let me put my arm around you and just you can cry, it's okay. And so it's, how can we bring some of that softness into it? Because there is a place for that, and there is a lot of value and strength in leading with some of this softness and not just shoving everything down, going into this hyper masculine state and just bulldozing through. Because once again, where is that going to land me? In a burnout, in a flare, in a resentful and angry kind of position, because that's where it's led me every time before now.
Yeah, and I am also the same. And I would say, a fair amount of people are. It's very easy to like bulldoze through things because we don't have to feel our emotions. We don't have to feel what's coming up. We don't have to acknowledge it. We're just like, it's like hyper focused on this is the problem. Like, what's the solution? What can I do? And like, let's get to it. It doesn't end well. It like for anyone, it never ends well. So yeah, that was really great advice. Like just trying to embrace the softness, and that's going to look totally different for each person. Like I don't even think we could give you a very specific way to do that because for everyone it's going to be so different. And if you don't have it takes time to build the kind of relationship that like Megan is in right now. And not everyone has that with their partner. So if that's the case, like looking for maybe an outside support group, maybe getting therapy, or if you have a safe person that you know you can talk to and who can actually listen and comfort you, like making sure you have just someone in your life that can provide that for you will allow you to probably embody more of that softness because then you're not left with holding everything in and not having anyone to share it with. So sometimes it's not your partner. Not everyone has that, but you can definitely find these other sources and still kind of embody everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, and him and I have also really acknowledged that we can't be each other's person for everything through this either. And we need to rely on other people. And that it still remains pretty uncomfortable for me. It took me a few weeks to reach out to my friends and be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm dealing with. And, I sent a message on to all of them we have a whole group message on, I think like Tuesday. And Tuesday was arguably the roughest day, physically, mentally, emotionally for me. And just being like, hey, I'm not doing well. And being like, like, I just needed to share that I'm not doing well. And, I got like some really nice messages back. I got some voice messages back the next day of like, if you need to talk, if you need a vent, if you just like want someone to sit on the phone with, like it doesn't have to be anything specific. And so, like, yeah, and you need these other people. And, I'm very fortunate that I do have a wonderful group of friends. And, I'm also like really feeling into who else feels good as a support. Is it a therapist? Is it an energy healer? Is it someone I've worked with in the past? Is it, one of these women that I've worked with and, done a lot of work with her in plant medicine work. And, I'm also only 9 hours away from her. And, we talked about, hey, do I drive up and see you and come see you for a weekend? And, she's like, I've got a bowl of soup and a blanket for you. Like, and do I just need to be cared for a few days? And that's, for me, very largely on the table. And it is an expense. And at the same time, I'm going to need it, is what it's looking like. And it's just a matter of when is the right time to go see her and do that. And then from a schedule perspective and potentially do some medicine work with her. And so, like, is that a thing? And making some other sacrifices, like, yeah, it's a financial investment and how much value am I getting out of it? And that's really like a big thing for me always of like, yes, there, a massage or acupuncture, like therapy, like all of these things can be a financial expense. And what is it really providing for you? And that's a really big deal. The other thing for me, and I've shared this many times before, it's like physical touch is a really big deal for me and my partner and my partner. And that's like our biggest love languages. And there are some challenges here. And, this is, I'm also learning a lot about this too, because cancer and oncology is not our specialty by any stretch of the imagination. But, for at least with his regimen, for several days after, know, we have to be a little bit careful. There are a lot of precautions we have to take because he is excreting some of the chemo treatment. And, for me, as someone with the history that I have, I did have a moment on Monday night of just like, oh goodness, like I don't, I just don't understand. And there's no research, obviously there's no research. So it's like, how does this affect like other people in your lives? And, that kind of thing. And, I allowed myself to have that moment and thankfully I have a lot of tools to help feel safe in my body again. But that's also a big thing of like, we have to have some limitations and there are some restrictions. It's only for a few days, is what the physicians tell us. My thoughts are a little different and also recognizing both of our needs for touch. And one of the things that we've really implemented this week is like before we go to bed, he or I, usually we go to bed together and sometimes that's not happening right now, is like having a hug of just like, an embrace for 30 seconds, a minute, a couple minutes of just like and allowing us to both soften into each other and once again like knowing yourself, knowing your love language and how can you support yourself through that. That's a really big deal too.
And hugs are so underrated. Like, I mean, I'm sure that's like extremely tough for you guys just because that is something that you're used to and you know that's what brings you like a lot of that safety and comfort in the relationship. So finding an alternative like that or just like figuring out like what's this going to be like for the next couple of months. But yeah, hugs are very, very underrated. We get a lot of release and a lot of comfort from hugs. So I'm glad that you guys are at least able to do that right now. And it sounds like what you were saying is you had some fear come up around like maybe like how is this going to affect your body? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, because we just don't know. And no one, like, does anyone really know? I don't think so.
Yeah. So from just because I think this would be useful to talk about for anyone who is very into like the holistic side of things. Maybe let's talk about like what does it look like on your end, things that you're doing besides like the body work and whatnot, maybe like supplement wise to help protect yourself when it comes to caretaking someone who's going through like cancer and chemotherapy.
Yeah. So, obviously, as we talk about ad nauseum, liver support is a really big deal. And, this has been challenging for me. I was doing the sauna, 2 or 3 times a week pretty consistently. I'll share the last 2 times I went in the sauna, it wiped me out. And it was too much. It was too aggressive. Now, I also did stay in the same amount of time at the same heat. So some of that is absolutely on me and some of my ego of like, no, I can do this. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It is not fine, and I need to make adjustments. So I've been trying to do castor oil packs here and there, and on days that I'm not doing a castor oil pack, I am on advanced head cuff from Cellcore. For liver support, I'm on a binder from them too called Vired Chem that felt like the best option for me at this time of just like it's a pretty broad spectrum binder, binds up a lot. So I'm doing that very, very consistently. Like I said, I'm doing the mushrooms, lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, just this general energy, mood, cognitive, sleep support, for everything. So that's really big. HCl support, I'm absolutely taking. Um, anything to help me sleep. And sleep's been a challenging one because one of the biggest symptoms he's been experiencing now for over a month is significant night sweats. I mean, to the point where he's getting up 2 or 3 times a night and having to like shower and change clothes and things like that. So it has been disruptive for my sleep and doing the best when I can. And then, does that look like, I'm on my THC gummies right now, my sleep support, and I feel no shame about that because it does make a big difference. Magnesium is a big one that I'm taking to help just, with overall stress support, like I said, the electrolytes. Um, what else am I taking? I think those are the really big things. I'm taking some CBD, like full spectrum hemp oil, the sleep blend from Hello Ned, is really valuable. I am also, and I'm not great at this, but I am microdosing, or working towards microdosing consistently. Sometimes the mornings can be a little bit rushed, right now. So sometimes I do forget. It just kind of slips off my mind, but trying to be consistent with that, because that helps with mood and energy, emotional support, and it also is helpful for my sleep as well. So, focusing as much as I can and doing the best that I can. I'll also say, like, laying down for 10 or 15 minutes if I have some time in the afternoon. And whether or not I sleep, that's not really the goal. It's just like rest. Just like giving my brain and body like, that little bit of time to rest and give it a break can also go a really long way. And once again, I know that's not going to be feasible for everyone. And if if that is an option, or maybe that's an option for one day, on a Saturday or Sunday or something, taking that time to try and get some extra rest.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of this. And I would say in general, excuse me, most of those supplements that Megan had just talked about are a pretty good like basis for anyone who is doing any form of caretaking. Maybe not everyone needs to take like the binder, but certainly, the liver support and the HCl support, the sleep support, that's huge. Like we have to make sure we're getting sleep or else you're pretty much going to be straight in line with burning out if you're not getting any sleep because it's so important. But yeah, those supplements as a whole are really great in the liver work and the body support that we talked about. There's one other thing that I was going to say, and it just left my mind. Um, oh,
I have,
I can't remember what it was. Go ahead.
yeah, I have something else I can share. And well, maybe you hopefully remember that. The other thing, we mentioned, like the physical body here and like movement. And, before all of this, I was going on multiple walks every single day, going to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Like that was a really consistent schedule. That is also not happening right now. And for me, it's just like I'm making it work when it works. So for me, like, I worked out today, we're recording this on a Friday. I actually worked out Wednesday and Thursday, which typically that's a pretty hard no for me. But I had about 20, 25 minutes on Wednesday and I was like, I'm gonna go work out. I'm gonna do something because my body is hurting. It had been about a week, but since I had been to the gym and my body needed some of that movement. And then I had some open space Thursday and I was like, I'm just gonna go again because it's gonna feel good for my body and it's gonna be good. And I just, watching total volume and stress and I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm going pretty lightweight. A lot of it's about just like functional movement, making sure I'm sitting a lot more. So making sure I'm opening up my back and shoulders and chest and, making sure my neck is supported and doing some like lower trap. Wow. I'm a little sore here. Lower trap work. And then, doing a lot of like glute and hamstring type work because, sitting and driving a lot of like quad and hip flexor extra activation that cannot feel good for me, especially. So making sure, I'm doing that and just fitting it in whatever way it looks and not forcing it to look a certain way or my usual or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it can be like, whether that's like 5 minutes of stretching or if you do have 20 minutes to get in the gym, that's going to be really dependent on schedule and that kind of flows into I remembered what I was going to say. Um, so a couple of things here, like I think the acceptance piece as well, like right up front when you do find out that your situation in your life and your schedule is all changing, like trying to acknowledge and work on that acceptance piece is a really big part of this because I think that's something that's easily skipped over because it's like, all right, we got to go, we got to do this, kind of like that bull mentality and really like those feelings will come back around at some point if we don't address them right away. And then when we talk about not like the self-abandonment piece and not overdoing it, I think it's super important to recognize your own patterns and notice when you are overdoing it. For me, I get agitated and I can see like I just start to feel like the anger manifest in my body. Sometimes it makes me feel like I want to cry. Sometimes it makes me feel like I want to sleep, but like I know what it looks like when I'm overdoing it. And that's really important to recognize, like as an individual, what does that look like for you? So hopefully you're not letting it get to that point often, but again, you have to know what you start to feel like when you are getting around that time frame. And that's just something that can be kind of like a light bulb in your head, like, all right, wait a minute, I think I'm not taking care of myself enough and I need to go do something for myself.
Yeah, and the other piece of this too, it's like having to let go of some things that like maybe you don't want to, and this is where you are right now. And for me, anytime, my skin is like where I typically show with a lot of changes, whether that's with gut, with stress, with hormones, all that kind of stuff. And so, just like being okay, my skin actually looks pretty good right now, but like, being okay with, some pimples and something like it is what it is and it is okay. And for me, like my hormones are not in a great place right now. I could tell the moment just because I've had enough testing and I'm so in tune with my body here that, my progesterone plummeted, pretty quickly and pretty significantly. And, which can make that, the last 10 days of my cycle not necessarily the most pleasant. And, also like my periods are not the best. And also like, it is what it is. And this is just where I am right now. And I'm supporting my body the best that I can. And also, not being super critical on myself of like, you should be doing this work and this is what it should look like and whatever it needs to be. And I took Advil for my period this month, and like it's okay. Like it's you know taking Advil once or twice, like I will be okay. Like it's not the end of the world, and just like not putting that kind of pressure on myself. Like it is what it is and it's okay, and I'm going to continue to do some work on, just like the liver support in particular. The microdosing for me does that really shifts some things, like especially in that second half of the cycle. There's I've seen some pretty good results from like people with PMDD and just like perimenopause and things like that. And, I'm now using this firsthand for myself because I know my hormones aren't the best in the best position at this very moment. And just like, once again, like being okay with it and supporting my body and what I can do with the resources I have at this moment.
Yeah, the letting go and the self-criticism is like a huge thing here, especially if you are a person who is generally feeling like pretty good and like, comfortable with your body and everything feels in line. Like, yeah, that's what stress does to us. It changes things internally, and sometimes like we can't have control over everything. All we can do is support ourselves the best that we can in the moment. We've talked about like the liver support, the supplements, all of these things are really great things to help your body stay on track. But yeah, the just like the acceptance piece and the letting go, and there's plenty of different ways to work on this stuff. I know that the microdosing thing can be really helpful with this, but not if you've never done it before, certainly might not be like the best time to jump into it. But yeah, that is also a very important piece here.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, the really, I think the name of the game here is like do what you can while you can. And really releasing a lot of the pressure of like needing to do everything, needing to be perfect with everything, needing to be doing all of this by yourself, because it's not going to happen. And we weren't meant to kind of like forge our way through this, any of these kind of circumstances all by ourselves. And so it's like, where can we get help? How can we help ourselves? And at the very least, how can you make sure some of these real basic things are in place? And how can we make sure we're doing just some of the most basic things to support our bodies, once again, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, all of these things are so important. And where can you get resources to make sure you have this as much support as you can?
Yeah, and sometimes too, just as like a last thing here, we can find, I mean, there's so many good like podcasts out there. There's so many good books out there where we can really start to dive into some of these things that we're talking about, like the spiritual stuff, connecting with yourself. Just yeah, I feel like sometimes they can be underutilized resources where if you don't have the funds to like go get a therapist or go do the extra body work, it can be helpful to kind of venture in that area as well.
Yeah, and also not over consuming a lot of that.
Yes.
Like for me, I'm like, okay, I want to learn everything and everything, about cancer and cancer treatment and root causes of cancer. And I am reading a book. I am working on, scheduling some sessions with someone who does specialize in the holistic health space from an oncology standpoint. And also, I haven't done it yet because I haven't had the space. And also, once again, like being okay with that, and incorporating resources as I can, and also making sure that I'm not, cancer is now not my entire life and being, and obsessing over it and doing, because that is a pretty natural inclination, especially for me in the holistic health space and wanting to do all these things, and recognizing where I am, and I can't overdo it because that's also not great for me in any standpoint.
Yeah, there's a fine line between learning about something in a healthy way and definitely going overboard. And it's very easy to do that nowadays with all the resources and everything that we have access to. So yeah, that's like a whole separate thing. I mean, definitely it's okay to look into stuff and learn what you can, but really making sure that what you're looking into and learning isn't stressing you out more and adding more to your plate is a big part too.
Yeah, for sure. So awesome. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And I'll also say, if only because I've had this question come up, I've shared this with a few clients so far. If you're looking for, a way to support me, thoughts, prayers, good juju, if you want to send any or all of that, my way or, for my partner and I, that's very much appreciated. And we will get through this and it'll be okay. And I'll probably be sharing a little bit more now that I'm in a place where I feel comfortable doing that. So thank you so much for listening. As always, like, subscribe, follow. Any 5-star reviews really, really mean the world to us if it resonates. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. See you next time.